Thanks, Paul, and thanks for everyone for attending. Quick slide on ABB. We're the largest transmission and distribution company in the world. What I mean by that is we would put the converter stations in and supply the cabling in some instances, or overhead lines. They're the projects we've done over the last 20 odd years, and they're obviously very sizable projects. And we're proud to say we've just recently completed the air grid project, the 500 megawatt project here in Ireland, in which we used Irish contractors, both here on the Woodland site and in the Shotton site in the UK. I'll touch on some of these areas here in a typical configuration for a wind farm. The converters themselves, which convert the standard AC supply into DC for transmission. They transmit at DC because of the technical issues associated with long runs of cable, but also for power efficiency reasons. The initial supply, some of our colleagues here have already mentioned these areas. Grid impact studies, all the legal and commercial services. Ireland is one of the most intense areas for such services due to the regulatory scope here. There's going to be a lot of offshore studies got to be done. There's been Irish firms involved in those studies up to on the most recent projects. Obviously onshore as well. And then marine vessels. There's a good opportunity for marine vessels here for carrying out these surveys. And then offices, temporary buildings, goes without saying. And additional services, we talked about food and further areas under the supply chain. This is a typical converter, similar to what's installed in woodlands. And in that, the opportunities there is obviously for cladding, and then all the associated groundworks. On the project in Ireland, the cladding actually came from Scandinavia, but there's no reason. We've got very good manufacturers here, very good suppliers here. So it's a case of those suppliers getting on the tender list. I have no doubt about it, they can be competitive. You look at the local jobs here, I think there's going to be a lot of upskilling required. We have a lot of electricians in Ireland who are out of work, but there's got to be upskilling. They've got to move from domestic and residential and industrial up to the higher voltages. So there's got to be training programs put in place to upskill them in cable jointing, high voltage relay protection, and working on high voltage equipment. So there's got to be training course put in place for that. But there's a lot of work there. There's 5 years work there for people. And with all these jobs, we've mentioned all the other ones, the civil installation, control and protection engineers. There's not enough of them in the country, but we can train people in Ireland, 6-month training programs. So that's something FOSS and the training authorities need to look at. And all of the LV work, there's a tremendous amount of cabling. So there's a huge potential there. And with that, when you learn those skills, you can export that skill. You can go with the companies of ABB and Prisma and go overseas with those guys again, Siemens. So it's well worth getting guys trained up in these things. And then maintenance teams. There's going to be a requirement for maintenance teams on these. Certainly on the electrical side, I'm sure there's going to be service level agreements, a 1 hour response. That means you're going to have local teams within 20, 30 kilometres of these facilities. So there's huge potential there long term. But that means retraining staff, getting them trained on the systems. Going over to our facilities in Sweden for training, our factories in Germany and Switzerland and elsewhere. And then just general local, we've got facilities there which will need to be maintained. Buildings need to be painted, roofs, guttering, sumps need to be pumped out and cleaned. So there's day-to-day facilities management opportunities there. This is the what we call gas insulated switchgear, GIS. And given the nature of this project, we would see most of the switchgear going indoors. So the medium and high voltage equipment will go indoors. Gas insulated switchgear. Hope you can see that there. And there's going to be a lot of, we won't have all the people to do all this work. So we will have to rely on local service partners here. So we're going to have to work with contractors here in Ireland. And as a proud Irishman and a Waterford hurling fan, I want to keep jobs in Ireland. I don't want people from outside coming in taking these jobs. So we need to get people trained up here. The structures, all the switchgear will have to go into structures. They can be prefabricated steel type structures. They can be precast concrete. There's a lot of precast plants in Ireland. There's a facility down in Banagher, other places like that. But we can build these here. You can build them by brick. But if we're building that many substations, it makes sense to build them precast or steel. But precast is probably better. And here's a structure here, which we done on a couple of wind farms here in Ireland, Irish-made steel structure. So we sourced the steel here. All the steel work was prefabricated here in Ireland, galvanised here in Ireland, and painted here in Ireland. And all the electrical fit-out was done here. And in some instances, they will take a lot of the equipment out of the nacelles and the towers and put them in these outside structures. These make a lot of sense for maintenance purposes, rather than trying to climb up 150 metres to carry out maintenance, have them on the ground, do the maintenance down here. So there's a huge potential there. And if we saw this project and we were successful, I think we need about 5 local workshops building these for us. You're talking about hundreds of jobs. Within the tower, there's potential there for buzz duct, low voltage buzz duct up to the tower, low voltage cable, but there's buzz duct made in here in Ireland, so more opportunities there. The offshore, we've mentioned already the service vehicles there. Our colleague here from PISM mentioned that. We can get barges made here in Ireland, and we can use those barges in overseas projects as well. Transportation, there's obviously fantastic opportunities for transportation. I don't think there's going to be enough, given the scale and the time frame here. There's a lot of potential for the transportation companies here. When we put in the cable in the seabed, certain parts of it, you need to have a rock dump on them, where you can't plough the cable. And on the East-West Interconnector project, that rock dump, and you talk about tens of millions of this rock, had came from Scandinavia. Why? Because that's where we used before. There's no reason why we can't get the same rock here in Ireland and get it quarried in the right fashion. So it's up to you as suppliers to find out about these things and come to us and say, I'm interested in this. Directional drilling. ABB used a Dutch company initially for the cable installation, but they were superseded by Irish companies, Irish subcontractors. They've done a fantastic project. Now, I would be saying I'd be going directly to the Irish companies now for all of this. So there will be directional drilling, cable laying here, as you can see there, and then obviously all the associated plant and machinery. So post-installation, local support, maintenance teams, retrofitting, there's going to be upgrades as it goes along. Control and instrumentation support, got to look at monitoring the control signals and everything. Facilities management, as mentioned. Access maintenance to the roads. Training courses. These training courses have to be redone. You can't just do one. You need refresher courses every year. Spare part support, local distributors. We can't hold everything in our stores in Dublin. We've got to have local supply partners for rapid response, for supply level agreements. And then after all this is done here, it's exporting that knowledge and going overseas and doing this work with companies like ABB and the others involved. So that's it. Thanks very much. And I just want to congratulate Mainstream for their initiative of this, and I wish them and Boardamon and Element Power and all these companies that entrepreneurial spirit in Ireland is alive and well, and it should never be degraded. And well done to all of them.